In her book, Race, Empire, and English Language Teaching, Motha describes the idea of centripetal and centrifugal forces. Centrifugal forces are those that move away from the center and in doing so support diversity. On the other hand, centripetal forces are those that move towards the center and encourage students to adopt the standards. In some of our class discussions, I have found myself caught in between centripetal and centrifugal forces. One example of this was when we discussed modern versus postmodern discourses in education. Postmodern discourses represent more centrifugal forces because they recognize the linguistic diversity of students and encourage multilingualism. Modern discourses, however, represent more centripetal discourses because they work towards assimilation by teaching students one common version of English. In this discussion, I felt that I was caught in between the centripetal and centrifugal forces because I was able to recognize the pedagogy stemming from both modern and postmodern discourses. While I believe that postmodernism is a great ideal, I think it can be hard to implement in classrooms. I was pulled towards the centripetal forces because it's easier and more straightforward to teach one version of English. However, I was pulled away by the centrifugal forces because I also think it's important to recognize the diversity of your students and encourage multilingualism. Motha described how using either the extreme for centripetal or centrifugal forces can be difficult and detrimental for your students because it might interfere with the student's ability to communicate in a socially acceptable manner, or it could teach the students that their language is lesser or hierarchically lower than English. In my own experiences with second languages, there were many classrooms that had a Spanish-only policy, which prohibited the use of English. I recognize that this is not like the experience of English second language learners because there are different power structures involved. However, I still think I experienced some of the frustration that came from not being able to use your first language in the language classroom. I think that this frustration in turn affected my investment, as Norton describes it, because I wouldn't want to go to a class that frustrated me. ESL learners' investment may be even more impacted by these English-only policies because in addition to not being able to use their native language, they're being taught that their native languages are lower than the target language. In this way, the centripetal forces can be detrimental for these students. Another experience I had with centripetal and centrifugal forces occurred in one of my volunteer sites. While I was neither the teacher nor the learner and was not experiencing the forces hand-on, I was able to observe the impact of the centrifugal and centripetal forces in this classroom. The teacher did not have an English-only policy. However, she did promote assimilation by teaching one standard version of English, and this acted as a centrifugal force. Since the class was in a high school, it was very important to the learners to be able to communicate socially with their peers, which meant that they wanted to learn various colloquialisms and slang words so that they could connect more with people. By asking their teacher about these and creating a discussion around the terms, they were able to introduce a centrifugal force in the classroom that not contradicted the teacher's centripetal forces, but helped balance out the diversity of the target language. I think it's important that both centripetal and centrifugal forces are present in a classroom in the best learner of the interest. And I think that the amount of each of these forces should be determined by the needs of their students themselves.